I'm going to try to get this video online as soon as possible tonight. Not wait till later at night, but try to do it right after school. The reason why, it's kind of nice you can watch the video on the review days. In case you're not quite getting it, you can at least figure it out and then you can ask questions the next day. Okay, if you're looking this over, there's 12 questions. So look it over, front, back, front. In fact, I'm going to scroll as you guys look. So go through it, make sure you're checking it out. I'm going to scroll here in a second. Okay, so if we scroll, here's your vocab. Same rules as always. Number 2, we have to find 2 things. We have to find the perimeter, then find the area of the shape. The next one, we have to find the name of the object. Kind of like this one, we have the name of this object, and then find on this one, we're finding surface area and the volume of it. So we'll look at those. Those are the formulas I kind of warned you. They're going to be over there. I'll be putting those up possibly tonight, that way you can see kind of what it's going to look like tomorrow. But it's basically just a copy of what the book had, but they'll be handwritten up there with pictures. 4, doing sequences, figuring out the next number. This is the part when we started doing inductive and deductive reasoning. And then 6, oh, that's weird. What's that? Does it look like that on yours?
No.
It doesn't look like that on mine, does it?
No.
Weird. What is written right there?
You have to do Q and or
Like that?
yeah.
You guys saw that, right? I just hit backspace and it showed up. That's really weird.
That's like an arrow.
Yeah, it looked like that's weird.
Rush.
None of the other ones did that, did they? That's really weird. Alright, whatever. Alright, let's go through this. My goal is after we get through the first 6, we might do 5 today because 6 and 7 I don't want to break those up, but we'll see. Actually, we might do 6 just because I know that tomorrow's going to be kind of a longer time. We need to get through as many as we can. Once we're through these 6, we're going to immediately go into proofs again to review. It'll take longer to actually review than what we're doing today. So once we're through this, then I want to get to the point where we can actually practice proofs again, because I said like each day I want to practice proofs. Like tomorrow, the last couple problems are proofs, so it's kind of nice we can go right to those. But today, after we do these 6, I want to do an example of expressions today. Okay? All right. You want to hit the lights for me, please? So let's walk through this. I'm going to read off the definitions of the words off to the side. You got to go find them as fast as you can. I'm not going to go that slow. We don't have time for it today. I want to make sure we get through this whole thing and we have a little bit of time to practice the proof at the very end. And we'll do the same thing yesterday where I hold the camera and you guys can do the little puzzles and figure out how the proofs work. Okay, first one, inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is the idea that you're using patterns, observations, and just plain common sense to make a valid conclusion. So that's inductive reasoning. You're using patterns, observations, and common sense to make a valid conclusion. So in inductive reasoning, you're just going to write in the blank. Okay, all right. So next one, number 2, congruence, equal in size, shape, and measure. It's geometric figures that are said to be equal in size, shape, and measure. That's congruence. Contrapositive. A contrapositive is the negation of the hypothesis and conclusion of the converse. So it is still a related conditional, but it's negating the hypothesis and conclusion of the converse. That is a contrapositive. Complementary, 2 angles that sum to be 90 degrees. The sum of 2 angles is 90 degrees. That's complementary. Notice we're still dealing with properties here. I don't get rid of some of those previous definitions. They were in the chapter. I use them. Postulate. Postulate is something we're going into. It's the whole reason why we're doing proofs. It's a mathematical statement that we accept as truth, and it doesn't need a proof. We talked about that earlier. When we started the proof section, I said there's certain things we're going to be going into. Postulates, theorems, basically, those are the two main ones. Postulate's also known as an axiom, but they're just little things that we look at to make sure that do you have to prove it or do we accept it? A postulate is something we accept, we don't even prove it. Counterexamples. It is an example that follows the hypothesis but disproves the conclusion of a conditional statement. It's an example that disproves the conclusion of the conditional statement. That's a counterexample. Okay, we're halfway through. Any questions so far? Did I go too fast? Is there a word that I skipped that you need to know again? That's the first half. Sorry, I went half. There's only 10 words, something like that. On this test, I'm going to warn you, on this test, 2 words will not be used on this next test. So like, I think on this practice guide, there's exactly the right number of words. On your test, there'll be 2 extra words that you will not use, and they'll be randomly thrown in there. So be careful of that. Because I said every test we build up, 2 words or more. It's every test is 1 more word is added to the bank that you're not going to use. So this test will have 2. Okay, next one. We're on to polyhedron. A polyhedron is a geometric figure, and it is a solid that has flat surfaces, and it's enclosed a single region of space. But it is a geometric figure, right? It's an object, but it's a solid, all flat surfaces. That's a polyhedron. We talked about all the different types of polyhedron, prisms, conics, all that good stuff. Negation is it's a mathematical statement that has an opposite meaning. That's a negation. Opposite meanings. Vertical angles are angles formed by the intersection of 2 lines. We talked about vertical angles quite a bit in chapter 1. It came up in this chapter a little bit when we did counterexamples with some homework stuff. Hypothesis is the part that follows the word if in a conditional statement. The part that follows the word if, that's a hypothesis. A conjunction is an actual like sentence that compound sentence that uses the word and. That's a conjunction. Now, thinking about this out loud, I'm spitballing here. Deductive reasoning might be a word you want to think about. Inverse or converse might be a word you want to think about. Supplementary might be a word you want to think about. Theorem, like the actual definition of the word theorem, like we have to prove something, what does theorem mean? Those are in the definitions we're going to those proof sections. Polygon might be a word you want to know, because we talked about polyhedron or conic. Linear pair might be a word you want to know, so it's vertical, a linear pair. Conclusion instead of a hypothesis, and disjunction. Just spitballing. You might want to study those words. All right, moving on. Number 2. Now we get into these shapes where we have to know the formulas, all the good stuff. If you or somebody around you has a textbook or an online version, you might want to go in there and start looking at some of the formulas. These formulas are on section 1.6 and 1.7. In fact, I'm going to give you the page numbers right now. If you're going in your book and you need to know where those formulas are, they will be on the board on test day. They're going to be over there, and there's going to be a lot of them. But you got to know how to use them. So the key will be the big part of it. So on 1.6, the formulas are on page 58. So in fact, if you want to write that down, that might be a smart thing. So the formulas for this one are on page 58.
What's the section?
Okay, that's section 1.6. That was the first section I said was chapter 2. When we get into properties, we have to do actual calculations. Some of the vocab words are on there too, on that page. Now the second problem, I should say the third problem technically, the one with this big block of cheese here, the polyhedron, that section is 1.7, and those formulas are on page 69. Page 69, and that's section 1.7. So there's your sections. You might want to go look at those. They're going to be up here on the board on test day, but you need to know what they mean. Okay? So let's walk through this. So I'm gonna go through just the starting point of how to do this, and I'll put the formulas up here so you kind of know. So I'm gonna go back to page 58 so I can give you the formula you need for this one. Okay, I have my markers. Perfect. Okay, first one, I guess we're on number 2. What is that shape?
That's fine.
Triangle. Boom, you already got a point. I'm not joking, you have to name it. It's a triangle. Now, if you want to be more specific what type it is, that's fine. I just expect you to write triangle. Next, we have to find the perimeter or circumference. This one, which one are you finding? Perimeter or circumference?
Perimeter.
Perimeter. Circumference is for circles. So we're finding perimeter. How do you find perimeter of that yellow triangle? How do we find the perimeter of this thing? What is perimeter?
That's the edge.
It's the outside edge. It's the walls. You have to add the walls together. So what numbers am I adding for perimeter? 5, 16, and 12. Your answer is going to be in feet. I'll let you figure that out when you add those 3 numbers together. Okay, does that make sense how you're doing it? The label is something I expect to see on test day. If you get the label wrong or you forget the label, I will count it wrong. The label has to be there. I'm a stickler for labels. Okay, area. Area of this triangle. The formula for area, if you don't know, it's half whatever the base is times the height. What's my base on this triangle?
5.
5. Yep. The base is 5. We're going to take it times how tall is it? 8. 8 feet tall. Height is used straight up and down. It's not a slant line, so it's straight up and down. That's 8. And whatever that number is, we have to cut it in half. So that's pretty easy. Your label will be in feet squared, because area is feet squared. So many square tiles are on the surface. That's area. That'll be a nice number. If yours turns out to be a decimal on test day, fine, we'll leave it a decimal. Maybe it's 0.5 or something. The formulas will be on the board. So I'll have the triangle, a square, a circle, and what's the other one we have in that section? Rectangle. Rectangle and square is the same thing, or the same formula, but I'll have those on the board. Okay, questions on number 2. Okay, you have to figure out those numbers by yourself. Okay, let's go to number 3. Yeah, this is page 69 for this next one. And I'll put the formulas up here so you have them. And again, they're gonna be over there. That's why you're gonna be facing that direction, so you don't have to search. And if you're not gonna be here tomorrow, not tomorrow, but Thursday when we take the test, let's say you're gone, you're sick, whatever, you'll have the formulas on a piece of paper. So you're gonna take it to some other room, they're gonna be written down the exact same way you see it here. So don't fear, you will have the formulas wherever room you take it in. And if you're by yourself, it'll be in my back room here. All right, what is the name of that shape?
Triangle.
It is a triangular
Prism.
prism. Yeah, that's a triangular prism. That one you have to be specific. If it's a type of prism, you have to tell me which type. It is a triangular prism. Now, why it's a prism and not a pyramid? It's flat along the top, it's not going up to a point. Pyramids go up to like a single point, like they're really pointy on the top, like a pencil top. That's a type of pyramid. Okay? This is a prism. Now, the formulas that we have to go after, we have to go through surface area and volume. Okay, so for surface area, okay, here's the formula you're going to want to write down. I'm going to just put it on the board right now. We're going to talk you through it. So, it's on page 69. It is P times H plus 2V. Now, let me explain. Again, the answer key, or the key, will be on the board. It'll be on the bottom of the board over here in the corner, what those letters stand for. This is surface area, by the way. Surface area, there's 2 ways to think of surface area. You can find the area of every wall, every face, and just add them all up. So find the area of that rectangle, this rectangle, the bottom rectangle, area of this triangle, and the back triangle, and just add up all 5 walls. If you don't like doing that, this is the formula you have to figure out. You have to use the base, figure out the perimeter of it. Well, on a triangular prism, the base is the triangle. They just have it sitting on its side. This is the actual base. The bases on a prism are the walls that are parallel to each other. So it's the front and back wall are parallel. Okay, so we have to find the perimeter of it. On this triangle, this 10 goes here, by the way. What's the perimeter of it? How do I find perimeter?
Adding 10, 6, and 8.
Yeah, you add, so this perimeter will be 6, 10, and 8. You add those 3 together. Then you have to take it times how tall or how deep the triangle goes. So when I multiply this on the depth, how far back is this picture going?
5.
5, that's the number you multiply by. The part that people get wrong is they don't know which face is the base. It's what you named it. If it's a triangular prism, it's the triangle, that's the base. That's how you find the perimeter of it. The only thing I'm worried about is if they give you a triangle where one of the walls is missing. So let's say this is a 3 and this is a 4. The wall that's missing, you have to use the Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to try not to do that to you, but we did talk about that in class, where they do this. They go 3 squared plus 4 squared equals the wall missing squared, that type of thing. That's Pythagorean theorem. If you do the math, that's 9 plus 16. And then to solve, you take the square root of this number, that's 25. When you do that, because you take the square root, you have to know how to type that in your calculator, and it's 5, so this would be a 5, right? The numbers have to make sense. On yours, they give you all the numbers you need. I'm going to try to do that for you. I'm going to try to do the problem where you don't have to go actively find something, because I just want to know, do you know how to use the formula? So that's what I'm checking for. Okay, we're still not done yet. So that was the perimeter times the depth. Now, what 2b means, it's 2 times whatever the area of the base is. Well, what's the base in this picture? The triangle. So we have to find the area of it. It's half the base times the height. That's the area of the triangle that we're facing. That's the one I highlighted. The base is 8, the height is 6. I multiply those together and cut in half. Your answer for surface area, when you get done with this, will be in centimeters squared. Will be in centimeters squared. So that's surface area. It's always in how many square objects you have. So you're going to have to figure out this number. You're going to have to figure out this number, and then add the 2 together, and that's your answer. Okay, questions on the surface area. Volume is really straightforward. So volume. Okay, here's your formula for volume for a prism. You take the base, and that's the area of the base. Well, we already know the area of this thing. The area of the base is that half the 8 times 6. That's the triangle, that's the base. That's how you find the area of it. And then we're going to take it times how deep it is. How deep does that thing go? 5. That's the height. Because technically this picture's drawn wrong. It should have been drawn where the triangle's on the bottom and it's going up in the air. Like that. Where the base is actually the triangle that it's sitting on. But they like tipped it over. Alright. And then the answer is cubes because you're doing volume. So many little blocks can fit in the object. Okay, questions at all? Volume is actually an easier formula than okay, again, you have to go calculate those yourself. Okay, number 4. 4 and 5. We're doing the sequences. Okay, so in the sequence, you're gonna have to identify like what the spacing is, because I'm picking ones that are pretty straightforward. I'm not gonna try to pick stupid ones that you have to think about for 20 minutes. I'm picking ones where you can recognize the pattern really quickly and figure out the next, the missing number and the next 2 after it. Okay, there's 2 types of sequences. There's an arithmetic, which is just they add or subtract a number the whole entire time, the same number the whole time. Like they added 4, they added 4, they added 4, they added 4. Or they subtracted 6, subtract 6, subtract 6. And then there's the other type of sequence just called a typical sequence, where they can just go by different numbers. I'll do one of these for you. Do you want number 4 or do you want number 5?
5.
Ooh, okay, raise your hand if you want 4, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you want 5. It's 5. Okay, we're doing 5. That was a clear winner. Okay, this one. What did I go up by?
4.
Okay, that's good to recognize that. I go up by 8. Go up by what, 12? Go up by 16. What's happening here? Yeah, the gap is increasing by 4. So the next number, I'm gonna have to add 24 to it. The gap is increasing by 4s every time, if you recognize that. So my next number, if I add this on, take 65 and add 24, I'm gonna get an 89. That's the missing number in the blank. Okay, then I'm gonna have to keep going, because it wants the missing number and the next two. Well, the next two, so recognizing this, I'm gonna have to add a 28 again, because I have to keep going up by 4s. So if I add a 28 to that, what is that, 107 or something like that?
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna have to go up again, I'm gonna have to go up by 32 now. Well, that's gonna be a 139. Somebody double check my math, I'm having correctly, I can't add in my head. That's one thing I did, just can't add in my head. Okay, it should be short, sweet, simple. If you have to think about it too long, you're overthinking the problem. I'm not gonna pick that stupid tricky one that's like, oh, you had to recognize it was like multiplying every number by itself 15 times. No, you're not, I'm not gonna do that to you. It's gonna be something super simple. You have to recognize the pattern and go from there. Find the number and the next two. Okay, do you see how I did mine now? That's exactly the type of work I expect to see. I want to see like what the gaps are. How do you know you're finding the next number? Don't just write down random answers. Show me the gaps. That's the easiest way to do it. Or maybe you recognize they multiplied by 2 every time. That's easy. Show me that they're doing that. Because some people recognize different patterns. Okay, we're good? Last problem of the day, number 6. Last problem of the day, number 6. We're doing a truth table. Okay, so in this problem, you have to figure out if this sentence, I'm just going to do number 6 for you. In fact, let me zoom in. Zoom. Okay, we're going to do number 6. Okay. All right, so the goal in the very end is to figure out, is this sentence true or false? But you also have to do a truth table to tell me the percentages. Like, what's the likelihood of this thing happening? This is the part you have to recognize if it's an and or problem. And or.
And.
That's an and. I can already tell you right now before I even start, the likelihood of this being true is not very high. On and, for an and problem to work, P and R both have to be true for this to be a true sentence. If one of them's false, it's automatically false. So that's why an and problem, its likelihood of being true is not really high. Okay? So, when we make the truth table, it's only going to have 3 columns. It's not going to be super big and tricky. The reason why, we're not negating anything, and we're not mixing a bunch of columns together, so I don't need to add a bunch of extras. On test day, usually the first one's really straightforward. The second one is usually where I add parts and I make it a little more tricky. So, I made this one kind of easy, but it could be trickier on test day. Okay, so P and R. So you're going to have a P column, you're going to have an R column, and then you're going to have a P and R column. And knowing that this is and makes a big difference. Okay, what are all the combinations? They could both be true. They could both be false. They could be true, false. False, true. These are all your combinations you have. Now, if it's 3 sentences, you got to make that huge chart. You make every combination of trues, falses, combinations possible. Okay, now for the last column, for this, since this is an and, we're comparing these two, P and R. For this sentence to have a T in it, the 2 in front have to be T's. So, true and true, that makes true. True, false, that's false. False, true. And false, false is false. I said, with the word and, they both had to be true for the last column. This is very low percent. In fact, this is, if you just look at this, this is 1 out of 4 chances you're going to be true. That's 25%. 1 divided by 4. 3 divided by 4, that is going to be false, 75%. Now, I haven't even read the sentence yet. We still have to read the sentence to figure out which row it is. Okay? All right, so let's figure this out. P sentence. Week has 7 days. Is that true or false?
True.
It's true. So far, it's one of these two. I can tell you that right now. It's one of these two, because P was true. What about R? There's 3,600 seconds in an hour. Okay, so we got to figure that out. So I need a calculator. I think that's true, but how do you figure that out? So many seconds an hour. You have an hour is what, 60 minutes? 60 minutes, you take that times 60, because every minute is 60 seconds, so 60 is 3,600, so that's true. So that's true and true, so your answer is?
True.
True. It's this one. Should have on that arrow. It was true to start with, sorry. Alright, so it was true. So it was the top column. So your final answer is identifying which row it is, but actually just saying, no, this is true. Yeah. That's the type of work I need to see. I want to see this type of thing. I want to see the chart. I want to see you identify which row it's going to be, and then tell me that the final answer is true or false. How I know it's true is the last answer. Whatever this answer says, that's what my answer is. That's how I know. Okay, questions? Okay, you can put your practice test away. Tomorrow we'll pick up right at 7, and I'll kind of show you the level of difficulty I could put there. And we'll continue on tomorrow. I know that tomorrow's kind of a shortened period day. That the best part about tomorrow is that the last couple are just proofs. The goal today is to look at proofs and do them for expressions. So that's what I want. That's what I want you to see today. I want you to see expressions. Because yesterday I think we did an expression right before the end of class, but I want you to experience some more of these. So if somebody wants to hit the lights on, great. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you a proof in an envelope, and I want to see, and we're going to be in pretty big groups today. I'm going to try to put you in groups of 4s today. My 4s are going to be, let's see, Anderson, go over there. Gentlemen, you guys come over here. And I guess you 5 will be all together. Boom. So, you 2 over here, you 4 ladies over there, and then you 5 gentlemen over here. So group up, go sit next to each other. You can move the desk around. Okay, move. Bless you. So move really quickly. Okay, now I'll ask you at the very end of class that I'm gonna want these envelopes back. And try to put all the parts back in there, don't lose any of the parts. Okay, here we go. Group 1, here you go. All the stuff's in there. Group 2, same thing. This is what we did yesterday, but now these are all expressions today. And group 3, these are all expressions. Try to refigure out the order that your proof should go in. Because all the parts in there, I want all the parts back. Definitely look inside the envelope to make sure that you've emptied it out completely to make sure that you're not forgetting. The start of the thing is to figure out what does the start problem look like. Because this is an expression doesn't have an equal sign. So you got to figure out which one is the start. And then where do they go from there? That's the hardest part.
Sheets with the property things.
I can print one.
With what?
Anyone else need that property sheet that doesn't have theirs anymore? Just one? Okay.
No, this isn't that long.
That would go after though, because this is.
The first one be. Oh, this.
This is after.
Dang it.
So that's just revision, I think. This is. Is this so simple to get rid of things?
Like this. Right here. There's an X. Oh, 7. Actually, no, because this says this.
Oh.
Get her 50s.
We don't need a 50.
That's good.
Maybe like this.
That would be.
So you gotta figure out where the first part is. Try to get the math done correctly.
Why?
It makes stretch out.
I don't do that.
I know it's weird. I don't like these.
Why? What is stretch?
Yeah, it's just weird. I don't like weird.
Actually, it's just the top.
was so stressed out. Cause I didn't think about it, I thought I was gonna present. But then Zane took 5 minutes, and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna present for that.
They took 2 minutes.
Well, like to set everything up.
Clever
Yeah.
girls. You firsted it.
Well, 80, so it's like, I'm at 30 hours, so. There's like 2 presentations. You're on 5, right? Yeah, Nick was 5.
Alright, I'm gonna give you guys one more minute. I know that doesn't seem like a lot. I wanna at least see that the math is correct. That's what I wanna see right now. We can get the formulas down here in a second.
I was with a teacher like Susan that just didn't care what we did. Did you ever what do we do this assignment? 100%.
I love how he types. He types like this.
Really? That's weird. He hated it. For no reason. As anyone that was in 6th grade last year, he hated it. 220 was like crushing cups once. He brought like 20 from lunch. And he started and I started laughing at this, like trying to be quiet, and he starts yelling at me. Feels bad. I think it's because I never did his assignments.
I challenge you. Said if you can
Alright. Which group thinks they have the math done the farthest? Okay. Now I don't care about property names. What I care about is the math. So let's take a look at that. Okay. Alright.
Got 50% on it.
I don't remember taking tests in this class.
Perfect. Alright. Hold up there. I'll hit a freeze. I'll try to zoom in. Do a freeze here. Okay. Tilt it towards you. Tilt it towards you. There you go. Alright, now look down. Try to get closer if you can. Try to get a little closer. Stop there. Oh, perfect. Alright, you put it down. Alright. So, I agree. That's probably where the problem started. The first step, they distributed over. Now, commutative is not there, so ignore the property names. They distributed the 8 over the parentheses. So the 8 went to the 2x, 8 went to the 4. Next, after that, they switched the parentheses. That should be the associative. Every single time you distribute, it should be the associative. So again, ignore the property names right now. So you switch the parentheses. Then you do the math. Okay? This is where it's different. Usually when you do the math, the parentheses are still on it. 16 and 32 will still be in parentheses. So that would be like right here. Okay? Now, here's the funny thing. I don't really mind. These two are written actually the exact same way. This is the part where the book would differ than I would. I would probably agree this is what I would write. The book will have the parentheses and then they'll go to here because they'll get rid of the bars next. But these are the same thing. If you don't, like after you do the math, you want to get rid of the parentheses, I'm totally fine with that.
So it's still correct?
Yeah, these two are still technically correct. Okay, going on, rearranging the 16 and the 5 so they're next to each other, and the 32 and the 18 are next to each other. Then when you try to subtract the x's, you have to factor out the x, that's factoring. Then you can do the math to make 11, and this makes 50, and then you get rid of the parentheses. So the only thing I would probably switch on the math portion would be like these two. I'd switch those around. But that's not a big deal. The properties, on the other hand, this is way different. So I'm gonna unfreeze, hold your camera up there again. Here's what I'm gonna ask. Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, can somebody else help her out? So Asia, if you wanna help, put distributive at the top. So distribution, that big one, put that at the top. Okay, next after that, put associative. So move one of these associatives that were right below it up. Okay, good. And then put a substitution below that. Okay, boom, there's your first three. You distribute, you associate, you sub. Okay, that's fine. Okay, now, later on, move the commutative down to about right here. Move the commutative down, so like just slide these down. Okay, commutative. Just slide those two tabs, yeah, slide those down. Yeah, push them down. All right, perfect. So we did commutative, we factored, and we substituted, and I know associative can go later. You can throw that associative like up if you want, that one associative. Yeah, all right, perfect. That is the correct order. I'm not joking. Most people's problems in here today are almost exactly in that order. You have to distribute if you have the parentheses first. You do associative, to figure out, you know, changing the parentheses around, doing subs to make those numbers. Then you can move things around as commutative. You can factor out the x's, and then you can sub it out. And again, these are iffy to me. I don't really mind which order these two, because usually I won't have one of these where they have the parentheses around the numbers. Okay. If you need to rearrange yours, I would like all those problems back in the envelope, please. I'm going to collect them. So thank you for your volunteering. Now I know today was kind of short and sweet. Tomorrow we're going to do way more of these, because you need to see more of these expressions. Envelopes, make sure everything's back in them. I'm going to collect them, please. I'm going to collect your envelope. Thank you for all the volunteers. Thank you for all the groups that were actively trying to work to get that thing done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, I turned in 2 old papers.
Yeah.
Did you get those?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, I have my. I haven't got your guys' class yet.
Because it's still a deep block.
Yeah, I'll get to it. I haven't got to that. I haven't got to your class yet. They didn't
Okay.
do those papers. Sorry. I'll get to them. Yes. Go.
What? Who sits here? I sit there. No, Katie McCoy sits here. Science. Maybe have science. Woods. What?
Oh, yeah.
I'm Snapchatting. Because I want to see how you do.
Listen, right, Wyatt, I'm not his person.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, shoot, I forgot what it is.
Kinda, sorta.
Not really. Yeah, at least you're taking it.
If you have a calculator or calculator and you want to go grab one, if you have a cell phone, put it in the caddy.
Myself.
Okay. All right, we're bringing this back.
Oh, thanks, Wyatt.
You're welcome.
Did I get?
+1, of course.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll heck it. It's a nice spot.
Yes.
Right there. Good to see you.
Like, you know, our
No. Stop.
That's what's there.
Okay. First, practice guys. I'm gonna hand these out. I think I got some for myself. Still recording my last class.